Hello, welcome to another QA-Automan tutorial, and in this lesson I'm going to explain what a page object is and how they're used in your automated tests. And we're going to be doing this in Kotlin, and we're going to kind of continue using the tests that we wrote before in my previous videos, which I recommend checking out before getting to this point. If you already know kind of how to set up the WebDriver and all that, and you kind of want to learn what page objects are, this is the perfect tutorial for you. And let's get into it. So the question is, what is a page object? A page object is a representation of a web page that houses and stores all of the actions and locators of that page. So you have like a one-stop shop to find all the things that are on that page, or what you can interact with that page, or whatever it is. It's all isolated in one area. So I'm going to take this website here. It's called toolsandtaverns.com. It's a really simple website. I'm just going to use this because I'm not trying to get anything too complicated, but there's a bunch of these little things. And one of the things here they have, let's use like this name generator. So you see some drop downs, and then you have this button here, and then it generates some text. Now, so what a page object would essentially be here is this one is you would have a class that would say, name generator, and then you would have drop downs represented in that object, a button that clicks, and then a way to retrieve all of these names or this text in this text box, and have it so that when you write your tests, you can reference these in your test without having to always rewrite them every single time. So we did like a refactoring video where I moved all of the locators up to the top of the test. And that's a nice thing to start with, but later down the line, if we're like, well, where's this input, or what was that sign up button, you would know, or where was that drop down, you would know that, oh right, I'm on the name generator page. There are the drop downs and the generate button and all the things I need. So let's create our first page object. Now, if you look at your setup here, you have your source, main, and then you have your tests. So this is kind of where your tests are located, and the main is a good place to start putting those page objects. Now, I'm going to create a new package here, and I'm going to call these, we'll call them just pages. And then inside we'll create this Kotlin class. Let me slow down a little bit, right click, new Kotlin file class. And we're just gonna create a file, and that's fine. And we're gonna name this one the name generator. So actually let's do caps, name generator page. So we'll hit enter, and here we are. So we have the name generator page. Now, the idea here is we want to start taking the main action components from this. And what do I mean by action component? I'm referring to things that you're going to interact with, or things that you'll need to pull from this page. Maybe my test might not be looking for this type of text here. Maybe it's looking for more of the title. Like, okay, I want to make sure that, or the title, name generators at the top. And maybe interact with these drop downs, hitting this generate, and then this text here. Maybe not so much the generator options. Again, pull the main kind of action components, and don't worry about these little minor components. You can get a little carried away, because eventually you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 components here, on top of having this navigator here on the left. So, you're going to have a lot of the footer down here. So, but, our tests are really going to be the functional test, and just making sure you do these actions and verifying those actions occurred. So, what we'll do here is, let's start from, the basics. So let's take this name generator. And in our previous video, which I recommend looking at, is getting CSS selectors. And that's what we're going to do right now, is we're going to start pulling our CSS selectors. So I'm going to go to the inspect mode. And here we go. And again, like I said, you can copy this element, and then we'll do a Control F in here, Control paste, and look at this element. Oh my gosh, this is very ugly. This is a huge no-no. This is something we definitely want to do. And again, in my last video, I said you look for IDs. We don't really see an IDs. The second would be we want to look for classes. Now, if I look here at H2, there doesn't have any attributes. The one above it has this title, and that's really interesting. So let's delete this and start with H2. What does H2 give us? It gives us this. There's only one H2, but again, let's get something with an ID or a class. If you just put it H2 and later down the line, if someone added an H2 in this page, it would look very bad. So, I mean, you'll have the possibility of getting 2 elements, and if they added 3 H2s, you know, so on and so forth, we don't want to do that. We want something specific, and title seems pretty specific. So let's do title, and add the caret here. And what does this give us? This gives us 1 of 1. I feel pretty comfortable with title being the title and having the H2 below it, and I believe this is an H1. So I'm happy with this title. So 1 of 1, which you can notice right here. And I'm pretty happy with this. So I'm gonna copy that guy, and over here in our page object, we first want to create a class, and the class will be the name generator page. And in here we still have our selector. We want to create. Let's just paste it here so we don't lose it. What we want to do is we want to create what are called the by CSS selector, and by is the object type, which you notice I created over here, this by selector. And there's, by the way, there's many ways to create page objects, and this is going to be the first of the 3, and then I'll show you the other 2 in future videos. But this is, again, to get you started and isolate where your page objects are. And then after that, you know, after I show you all the different ways, you can choose the flavor of page object that you want to use. But for this one, I'll explain the pros and the cons here. Now, this one is, we want to create what is called a by. So I'm going to paste this in here, and I'm going to create, what is this? This was the title. So we'll just call it title. And then if you ever get to this point and it's saying like, oh, we want to import something, if you press Alt Enter, it will pop up this kind of drop down and letting you know, oh, here's some things you can do here, and I want to import the library for this object. And also I'm going to create the type here just so that we know, okay, what type of object is title? It's a by. And you're kind of thinking, okay, well then wait, what's this by thing, right? Why are we calling by? It's just a way that you to say, how are we finding our elements by CSS selector. There's other ones, like if I go by dot, well, it's just val test equals by dot. There's a few. You can say class name, ID, link text, partial, XPath. You know, there's a bunch of different ones. Now, I like to stay consistent and just use CSS selectors. So you'll never have, you know, you'll never kind of run into any kind of surprises. You always have a standard. Again, if you don't have to, if you want to do IDs and you have IDs, then by all means, it's not a negative thing. At the end of the day, these types are still gonna all be the same, right? So even if I did ID, you know, my ID, in the end of the day, this object will still be a by type. And then what are these by types? Like, what do you do with these? Well, when you want to interact with them, you would run a driver dot find element, and then you just pass in that object. So like this one is passing in a by CSS selector up here, and then I'll show you how to import these classes inside your test case. But for now, let's keep building out our page object. So we have the title. Let's see, what else do we need? Let's get the drop down here. Oh, this is cool. This has an ID. Let's see how this evaluates. Now, hashtag is ID. Paste this, press enter. So Looks like there are two of the same IDs, which is usually a bad thing. We never want to have IDs be two of the same. The developer would need to fix that. So let's figure out another thing that we can choose here. It looks like there's a classes. So next thing, IDs, then look at classes. Okay, we have a gender select. So let's do this. Let's see what happens if I do a gender select. It looks like it's giving me the one thing. Okay, so that's good. One of one. So let's use gender select. So let's add that to our, this is the gender drop down. What's the type? By equals by dot CSS selector, and paste our gender select. Now again, if you really want to, you can say class name, and you have to remove that dot. That dot should not be there. The dot and the hashtag or the pound sign character is only for CSS selectors. So remember that. Be very careful. So if you want to start mix and matching class name and CSS selector, again, that's okay. Just be aware of what you're doing. I'm gonna keep this as CSS selector to keep it the same. Okay, so let's see. The next thing we need is the race. So it has all of these different drop downs races. So let's choose a not the ID. So let's go back to class. Let's try this race select. This one looks pretty unique. So race select, press enter. What do you have? One of one. Is it selecting the thing? Perfect. This is exactly what we want. So copy this. I think you're getting an idea here. Race drop down. It's a by equals by dot CSS. Oops, CSS selector. So boom, boom, and two more. We need this button generate. Let's use that. Test it out. One of one. Perfect. Copy that. Let's do val. We'll call this the generate button by equals by dot CSS selector. Again, I'm using the autocomplete by just pressing enter. So if I'm on the by and I hit, oops, what did I just do? Okay. If I do the dot CSS selector, I just press enter and it autofills. And then I'm just pasting, from copying from this this field. And last but not least, inspect. So we want all of these name, and then we want all these spans. So let's see what happens when we do name. It gives us one, except for we want all of these down below, these spans. So if we do caret span, we have 1 of 10 over here. So that's what, and I'll explain why we want this in a second. But this is what we want. So let's add this here. Val, and these are the name text field values. By equals by dot CSS selector, and paste. Now this one is gonna be special because when we interact with this, we want to return a list of all the things we want, and then how are you going to know that? And what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to keep this one private, and what I'm going to do is I am going to we'll do something with this that will have a function that will retrieve the values and set them as a list. But for now, we're gonna do that. So there we go. So we have all our pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now this is a good representation of our page object, right? We have, okay, what exists here. So the title, the gender drop down, race drop down, generate button in the name field. If at any time one of these drop downs change, maybe it has a different class or it has an ID or something, you only need to change it in one spot, and that's the beauty of a page object, is you only change it in one location. So everything that's referencing this race dropdown in all of your tests, you know, when it references it, you change it here, and you just have to change it once, which is awesome. And this is the pro for creating these page objects. So, you know, let's create a new test here, and we're gonna create a whole new package for this, to kind of keep with the standard, which this one was tools and taverns. Inside this tools and taverns, we're going to create a Kotlin file, and we will call this the name generator tests. Right, this will be a bunch of name generator tests, and we're gonna create a class and kind of have that kind of auto generate for us. If it was a file, it would just look like this, and then we'd have to type in everything. Adding a class, we'll just add these 2 lines here. And in our class, we're gonna test the generate name displays text. So this is just gonna be a quick test here. We need to annotate this as a test. Now let's add our page object to our test. And to do that, we need to pass in the driver that we create and pass it into the test. And how do we do that? Well, we're gonna create a constructor here. And to do that in Kotlin, you know, the way to do this, put parentheses, and then you just type, you know, val, what is it that we want to pass in? Driver, web driver. And that's it. And now you have the, you know, when you create this object and you pass the driver in, it's actually available for you to use in this class. Now, and why is this great? It just allows us to not have to pass the driver in all these places. That's kind of the pro. The con is you have to create this class for every test that you want to use this. And so you kind of weigh the pros and cons there. But we're going to do it this way for this particular page object. And remember I was kind of talking about the how to get the list of values, because we create this private. We're going to say get generated names. We'll just get generated names, and we will then use this driver to dot find elements with an S. So we're going to find multiple elements, and this is going to be able to return a list. And we're going to pass this in. So this will return a list, and that's essentially it. This is asking for a list here, list of web elements. If I hold, so I'm using Windows and I hold Control and I hover, it's letting me know that the type is a list web element. So that's my return type here. And so I think this is good enough. So let's add our object here. So it's a name, what is it? Name generator page. So at the top here, let's do name generator page, name generator page. Now we have to set this as something. So here I'm just going to say var, and I'm going to say this equals null for now. And we're going to do this because we need to have another function that kind of sets up set up the driver. So we're going to set up the driver, and then we're going to pass that driver into all of the objects that we use. So to do that, we're going to add the function. I think we've done this before class. Actually, we'll just call this one set up driver and pages. And this will be what is called a before. We'll do this one as a before. Before we run the tests, we want to do this. So before the tests, we want to. I'm gonna do some copy paste here just for the sake of yes. So if you look at my last tutorial about when I created the driver, kind of follow that along to show you how to set it up, but I'm just gonna reuse some of this code just for the ease of getting through what we need to do. Yeah, so we'll add the driver. Make sure to make all of these variables private on your class. It's important that you do that. And I'll explain later down the line, but it's just good practice. You know, you don't need to share these across other things. We'll keep these private. So in this setup driver and pages, we have the, you know, it creates a driver, and then we want to down here name generator page equals, and then we're going to create our object name generator page and pass our driver in. So okay, so and then we want to add the double exclamation points to say, hey, make sure this isn't null when this gets passed in, but we do know that it's not null, so it's going to most likely be safe. Now, what did we just do? We just did a bunch of things here, right? We're throwing in drivers here. We're just setting things up here. Let's take a step back and figure out what happened. So first off, we're setting up, you know, where is our driver located? And in a previous tutorial, we put it inside this drivers folder. So we're locating where that is so that when we take our driver and we initialize it, we know where it is, and it will run. So now we have our driver set up and it's running. Now we need to take this driver and pass this in to our name generator page, which we did here. So that means that this class now has access to this driver and we can use it in this class. So it will allow us to run all these functions. So if I ran this get generator names, it will use the driver that we passed in from our test. So this is going to be really nice, allowing us to write some really great functions to have our page object be, you know, interactable. So let's start it up. So the first thing is we want to generate name displays text. So let's add the first thing. We need to go there. So how do we get there? Driver.get, and we want to go to https www.toolsandtaverns.com. So we'll go there, actually, and we want to go to slash name generator. So let's add that here. Actually, yeah, let's add that there. So we want to go there. Again, it's asking, hey, is this driver, is it null? So we add there. Then after we're there, what do we want to do? We want to verify that we're actually on that page. So let's make sure the title is name generator. I'm just going to copy this text. Again, if you don't ever assume what's on the website is correct unless you have some definitive proof of that. Otherwise, use whatever mock or spec or something that says this is what the text should be, and then use that. So I'm going to access our page, and I'm gonna get the title, which is right there. So dot title. Now this is doing two things. First off, we need to say, hey, make sure this isn't null, because again, when we're accessing it here, it doesn't know that we've initialized the page down here. So it's kind of always going to have to make sure that you check for null. Now this is returning our by, and the only way we know how to get what to utilize this by is doing a driver.find element. So we can do the following. You can say, you know, driver.find element and pass that in. And again, we need to specify, hey, make sure this is not null. Driver.find element, right, and get the title. So now we have the title. What we want to do is we want to verify the title's text. So we can store this. Let's just store title text equals this. And then we want to do an assert. If we're there, let's verify the title text is what it should be. In our case, we want to do an assert equals that the title text equals name generator. Title text did not match. May have loaded a different page. I don't know. Maybe it's always nice, having it just this piece right here is good enough. Sometimes I add extra text or maybe something saying like, here's a possibility of what could happen, and that will help developers or help you debug your mysteries later down the line when these tests fail. So you know what? Let's run this. Let's see what happens here and see kind of the fruits of our labor. So let's right click, run, see what kind of okay, so it booted up our driver. Now we want to go to the tools and taverns /name generator. And now we should be checking. Is it checking? It is. Uh-oh. Failed. It could not find .title /h2. That's very interesting. So it was unable to find that. So let's figure out what happened here. Let's debug this. So my browser didn't close again, which we had a solution previously, but for now, let's just keep this open because this is open. Let's debug what happened here. Let's inspect. It couldn't find .title. It's gonna just do a Control F. .title h2. So it found it, but then here it's saying it didn't. So how do we debug this? What I'll do here is, you know what? Before let's where did it fail? Right here. I see what I did wrong. So what's happening here is title. So let's zoom in here. Title text did not match. May have loaded a different page. Okay, so that's our error here. Expected name generator, but actual it was this thing, this whole Chrome on the XP selector. So what's happening is this text is a web element, and I didn't actually say find the text. So to find the text, we say .text. So that was our problem. So let's close this up. And then we're going to rerun this. And we're going to add a second piece, which is the after test. We want to tear down. Tear down. And we're going to driver.quit. So now what will happen is even if this test fails, after the tests are run, it will quit. So let's rerun this test again and hopefully see it pass. We want that green check mark. So loading up the page, load up the driver, load up the page. Okay, and that was very fast, but we got a pass. That means that our cert worked. So we were able to pull our title from our page object and pull it into our test class here, initialize it in our before method, utilize it, get the text, check it, and then we proceeded to tear down. And in a nutshell, that's a really simple way to start your page objects. And in my next video, I'm going to explain how to create, how to interact with drop downs in our page object and how we utilize them in finishing up our rest of our generated name display text. So until then, guys, keep on automating.